its new emphasis on inclusion. Listen in.
अभी हाल में अमेरिका ने जो नई टैरिफ नीति अपनाई, उनके अपने हित के लिए अपनाई होगी, लेकिन उसकी मार तो सभी पर पड़ रही है। इसलिए ये सारा परिदृश्य अथवा ये सारी प्रचलित पद्धति, उस पर हम निर्भर हो जाए ऐसी नहीं है। प्रजातांत्रिक मार्गों से भी परिवर्तन आता है, ऐसे हिंसक मार्गों से परिवर्तन नहीं आता है। एक उथल पुथल हो जाती है लेकिन स्थिति यथावत रहती है। ऐसे हिंसक परिवर्तनों से उद्देश्य नहीं प्राप्त होता है, उल्टा इस अराजकता की स्थिति में देश के बाहर की स्वार्थी ताकतों को अपने खेल खेलने का मौका मिलता है। हिंदू समाज का बल संपन्न होना, शील संपन्न होना, संगठित होना इस देश के एकता, एकात्मता, सुरक्षा और विकास की गारंटी है। क्योंकि हिंदू समाज सनातन काल से यहां चलते आया है, वो इस देश का उत्तरदायी समाज है, रिस्पॉन्सिबल सोसाइटी है।
Now viewers, earlier the Prime Minister in his tribute had remarked that the RSS is lucky to have survived a scurrilous and malignant attempt, as he called it, to erase it from Bharat's political and societal firmament. PM Modi spoke yesterday, of course, as you know, and he said that attempts were made to crush the RSS after independence. RSS has unshakable faith in constitutional institutions and has always abided by constitutional dharma. Listen.
सामाजिक समरसता को आज डेमोग्राफी में बदलाव के षड्यंत्र से, घुसपैठियों से भी बड़ी चुनौती मिल रही है। यह हमारी आंतरिक सुरक्षा और भविष्य की शांति से भी जुड़ा हुआ प्रश्न है, और इसलिए मैंने लाल किले से डेमोग्राफी मिशन की घोषणा की। राष्ट्र साधना की इस यात्रा में ऐसा नहीं है कि संघ पर हमले नहीं हुए, संघ के खिलाफ साजिशें नहीं हुई। हमने देखा है कैसे आजादी के बाद भी संघ को कुचलने का प्रयास हुआ, मुख्य धारा में आने देने का और उसे न आने से रोकने का अनगिनत षड्यंत्र हुए। संघ के अलग अलग संगठन भी जीवन के हर पक्ष से जुड़कर राष्ट्र की सेवा करते हैं। शिक्षा हो, कृषि हो, समाज कल्याण हो, आदिवासी कल्याण हो, महिला सशक्तिकरण हो, कला और विज्ञान का क्षेत्र हो, हमारा श्रमिक भाई बहन हो, समाज जीवन के ऐसे कई क्षेत्रों में संघ निरंतर कार्य कर रहा है।
Despite what the Prime Minister has said, the RSS had been almost written out of India's modern political and cultural history. The question is, why did an entire Congress-led ecosystem despise the RSS so much? Were the epithets chosen to malign the RSS totally arbitrary, devoid of fact, or were they founded in some amount of truth? Now friends, let's open this up and have an honest discussion. We have with us some important voices, people who've been around a long time. They're all academics, journalists, scholars. I haven't brought in the political class here because that generally tends to, I believe, lead to cacophony and a lot of rhetoric. So let's eschew that and examine certain questions. And I want to first begin with Kanchan Gupta. He needs no introduction. He's a senior advisor to the INB ministry, but has been around for many, many years. Has been, in fact, media advisor to former NDA government and wears many, many hats, distinguished journalist. I want to begin with you first, Mr. Gupta, simply because you've been around so long and you have watched so many phases of our history like some of our other panelists have. So I want to ask you whether you believe there was some sort of an orchestrated campaign launched by a cabal, perhaps of historians, social scientists, or maybe even political establishment, to, as the Prime Minister says, crush the RSS. And why would this campaign have been launched? And was it devoid of merit, especially the things that have been remarked about the RSS?
Namaste, Rahul. Thank you for having me on this panel. The reason why there was a great degree of disquiet, I believe, with the RSS was because it offered an alternative vision of India. It had a vision of India as a nation, and it had a vision of, or it had an idea of what consisted or what comprised nationhood. Now, that was something very, very alien to those who came into power in the early years of our independence. And there was an element to sort of push this alternative vision to the margins or beyond. You must also remember that the Gandhi assassination case, which sort of brought a great degree of accusations against the RSS, did not quite help the organization. Now, just because one of the assassins at a certain point of his life had an association with the RSS, does not mean that the entire organization was involved in it. And yet all the top pracharaks of the RSS, whether it is L.K. Advani and others, they were put in jail. And of course, when the inquiry cleared the RSS, Sardar Patel himself took the initiative of lifting the ban on the RSS, and subsequently there was a great degree of correspondence between Sardar Patel and the RSS, which changed the views of the establishment. But some views remained written in stone, carved in stone, including that of Nehru and the cabal which you referred to, the official historians of the government of India, for whom it was unacceptable that there could be an alternative vision of India other than theirs. You know, the debate which we begin today, or which we hear today, or an attempt to reignite the debate whether India is a nation or a union of states. Now, RSS believes that India was, is, and shall remain a nation because it is a civilizational nation. On the other hand, those who don't believe in the idea of India as a nation or in the idea of Indian nationhood, they continue to refer to it as a union of states. So that's a basic fundamental difference. And the third difference that comes to mind is the emphasis on cultural identity. There was this great degree of trying to get rid of your own cultural identity, of your own civilizational identity, because that was considered modernization, that was considered secularization of society and polity. But as we know, that never really took off, and what has prevailed is the RSS's idea of a civilizational or a cultural identity, and that is something which has also helped the organization to not only survive various assaults on it, but to also expand to every nook and corner of the country.
Okay. Let me bring in Sanjeev Srivastava. Sanjeev Srivastava, the question that comes to settle upon the RSS when all things are said about it is that it isn't inclusive enough. Is this observation a valid one?
Well, see, first of all, thank you very much, Rahul, for having me on the show. And what Kanchan just said, I do agree with quite a few of his things, what the observations he made. The only difference was that it was just not Nehru and his supporters who ostracized RSS. Remember the Janata government, the first non-Congress government, the entire issue of dual membership and RSS, that's what brought the Morarji government down at a time. So there have been a section and a prominent section whose polity has centered around opposing RSS and the ideas it represents. Of course, the nationhood idea is one, but I think it's mostly what you pointed out, Rahul, that it's considered by many as not inclusive enough. it's considered largely as an organization which represents the Hindutva and the Hindu identity of India, and which is absolutely fine in my opinion, because India has been a Hindu civilization or a Hindu country for centuries before Islam came to India. But the manner in which it has been propagated, or the manner in which its opponents have manipulated it, both things have contributed to RSS somehow standing for what is the antithesis of secularism as we know. And that has been a constant churn and a constant debate. So now when Mohan Bhagwat says that please don't look for a mandir beneath every mosque, he comes across as a very welcome relief. But a lot of his supporters and even members of the RSS don't subscribe to that. And a lot of right-wing Hindu organizations take a very strident line. So that's a clash, and I think Mr. Mohan Bhagwat is trying his best to retain the original character, thought, ethos, identity, the intellectual thought of the RSS, still understanding what is today's reality, that we are a country, but forget minorities, just Muslims constitute about, according to different estimates, say 17 to 20% of the population. And one has to stick together as a nation if we want to progress and develop. If we try and push them too much to the margins, there may be just so many problems, and some of which we see. So yes, to answer your question, the inclusivity part, the Hindutva, strident identity, what the Western media described for a long time as Hindu nationalism, all these things are something which have checked the RSS growth. Otherwise, it's a great organization. The kind of relief works it does. Even in Srinagar, when floods were there, and I went there as a reporter.
Sure.
The amount of work RSS has done, whether it's amongst tribals, where
it doesn't distinguish on the ground.
It doesn't distinguish, and when the Christian missionaries work in tribal areas, that's one thought. So a Vanvasi Kalyan Parishad is equally entitled to work for the Hindu thought, so to say. There amongst tribals.
Let me on that point that I think Sanjeev Srivastava made, let me bring in Sachin Nanda, who is the director of ICFS and also has written a book which we all reviewed a few months ago. In fact, Sachin, thank you for joining us. There's also, of course, senior journalist here with us, Shekhar Iyer. But I want to ask you, because this was touched upon by Sanjeev Srivastava, this concept of Hindutva as propounded by Savarkar. How, or maybe even before that actually, if you really look back in time, the word's origins came from a poem really, which became very anthemic. So I want to ask you this, how central is the concept of Hindutva as propounded by Savarkar to the RSS, or has the organization reinterpreted it in more pragmatic ways over time?
Rahul, thank you so much for allowing me to join you. It's good to see you and join all our panelists from here in London. First and foremost, I think it's worth acknowledging, right, that the RSS is an institution. It's an Indian institution, right, that is rooted in the civilizational story, and it's older than the modern state of India. So I think that is worth acknowledging, that the RSS is older than the modern state of India. Therefore, the RSS is probably one of India's most prominent, whether you like it or not, whether you think it's malevolent or benevolent, that's by the by. But its rootedness is there. Now, so therefore, the question you're asking is, upon what ideology or what philosophy is it rooted in? And really interesting is that when I was doing the research for the biography, which came out earlier this year, published by Penguin, what I discovered in that research, and it was a 7-year-long haul of going through the archives of Hedgewar's, Keshav Hedgewar, the founder of the RSS, his own letters, his own notes, etc., is that right from the off, there he got the lexicon from Savarkar. He had a great respect for Savarkar, but fundamentally, he didn't agree with Savarkar. Let me explain how, just so we can split the hairs, because I think it's important. Savarkar is what you'd call a political nationalist, as were most of his contemporaries, right? These are people who believe that you capture the state and then you re-engineer the society through the power of the state. Keshav Hedgewar believed the exact opposite. He was a cultural nationalist. He transformed himself from being a political nationalist into a cultural nationalist. What he believed was the Rashtra is real. The nation is real. And therefore, until and unless the nation is strengthened, i.e., the individual unit of the nation, that means the individual, the character, the person has to be empowered, strengthened, etc. When the Rashtra is developed, the state will automatically become stronger and the Rajya, as it were, will automatically take care of itself. But you have to start off with the Rashtra. So actually, right from the beginning, the idea of Hindutva was a very different in practice when the RSS applied it right from the beginning. And there is no doubt about it that while Hedgewar was obviously deeply influenced by Tilak, Munjay, Savarkar, he chose his own path, and the RSS chose its own path. And we have to understand something fundamentally about the RSS. The RSS and what Hedgewar realized, the RSS is an experiment. It's a social experiment. It's a 100-year-old social experiment. And I suspect it might still be around for another 100 years. But what was that experiment trying to achieve? Let me just end with this. Indian society, historically, for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, was fragmented and divided into caste, class, and creed, right? And what Keshav Hedgewar essentially did was he created a safe space for Indians to come together and transcend caste, class, and creed. And even today, when I go to shakas all over the country, it's the one space for that 1 hour a day where young boys, men, etc. come together. There is no notion of caste, class, and creed anywhere. And I say creed very specifically, and I emphasize that because in the early RSS, we have evidence that we know that Christians joined it, Muslims joined it, people of all castes, classes, the entire strata of society were joining the RSS. So we got to understand that what the RSS is, it's an engine of social capital. It builds the social capital upon which a Rashtra can be established. And only then does the Rajya come into play. So one thing I would say is that over the next 50 to 100 years, I think this myopic lens we have, that we try and understand the RSS through the BJP or through some political arm, is actually misleading us. The RSS is far broader, deeper in thought and aspiration than we can imagine. But we have to first see the RSS for what it is and not through the political manifestation.
Well, that's I think a very interesting deep dive into the question that we've posed. So, Shekhar Aiyer, let me just bring this up to you. How did this story then get so badly twisted in the narrative that has been passed down since even before independence? And second, how despite the malignant portrayal of the RSS, has it kept growing? That obviously abnegates the complete propaganda that has been ascribed to it. And how does it continue? It's in fact grown into the world's largest voluntary organization. How does it continue to attract modern Indians?
Rahul, the answer to your question lies in what the Prime Minister said while launching the stamp and coin today. The basic credo of RSS is you accept the situation as it is and work towards changing it. जो मिलता है वो स्वीकार कर लो और बदलो. And if you remember when recently when Bhagwat had this outreach program, he too mentioned the same thing. He said, if at all we have differences with our other organization, including the BJP, it is about our constant strive for change. We are not for status quo. The origin of this problem between RSS and those who don't accept the RSS is this. It is the perception of the wound caused by the partition. Because the RSS believed right in the run-up to the independence and thereafter that you will have to acknowledge factors that led to the partition. You cannot wish it away. On the other hand, Nehru and other Congress leaders believed no point on dwelling on the wound. Rather, let us assume that it doesn't exist anymore and superimpose a concept of secularism so that the wound heals. This has been the fundamental thing which has been going on. So, but then the wound remains because it festers. You have not acknowledged the original problem. And along with that, the identity politics, which the subsequent Congress leaders encouraged, also led to the RSS marshalling its arguments. Look, this is what we have been saying right from the beginning. That once the partition has happened, which the RSS opposed, now we'll have to accept the reality and work towards nation first. So, and this constant, strive, whether we have political power or not, has been the driving engine of the RSS. See, RSS has survived several, secular governments because it believes that we have to keep striving. If there is political power, that political power aids our goal. And Bhagwat has not minced words. Something I want to say, I have covered the RSS as well as the BJP. BJP may be, having its strategy, short-term strategy, long-term strategy. But if there is to come to the RSS, the goal is clear. There is nothing secret about, what they have in mind and where they are looking at. And today, if you see after what Prime Minister said at the centenary celebration today in Delhi, there is more convergence now. The BJP maybe have to indulge in real politics now and then. But when it comes to the common goal and the areas that have been identified by the RSS, even right from inception, may have been modified, but the approach may be different, but the goal is the same.
Okay.
Where nationhood becomes number one and you prepare the individual for that nationhood. There is no mincing of words in this. On the other hand, the so-called secular parties or secular thinkers, they believe that this RSS concept of nationhood, is against the diversity that this nation represents. And it also affects the politics. Once it affects the politics, Congress finds it difficult because, as I said, the secular, construct was some kind of an artificial in the sense Nehru and other leaders felt this is the best way to move forward. Let us assume after a creation of a Muslim Pakistan, a secular India is the best answer.
Okay, so Kanchan Gupta, let me just come back to you because this is interesting. The RSS today speaks the language of inclusivity, outreach, even to Dalits and marginalized groups once outside its fold. Is this a tactical move or a genuine ideological evolution? And is it an evolution at all? Or is it actually a reharking to a large number of values that it has always espoused but never given credit for?
So quickly, I first wanted to clarify this whole thing of RSS version or RSS allegiance to the concept of Hindutva. Now, Hindutva, unfortunately, in our country is associated only with Veer Savarkar. But I'm sorry, that is now not how it originates, and that is not how it comes into your cultural and political lexicon. Way back, we had a Bengali writer called Chandrakant Bose, who wrote an entire treatise called Hindutva. And it was basically to explain what sets aside Hinduism as a creed, as a belief system from others. And subsequently, when there was a great degree of criticism of the Brahmo Samaj for alienating itself from the roots of Hinduism, you had Sri Aurobindo's grandfather, Rajnarayan Bose, who wrote another book called Hindutva or the Hindu Dharmir. He compares that Hinduism is way superior to what people think of it. So you have to take the whole thing in totality. And over the years, what has happened, what has changed, is that the RSS has also evolved in its worldview, in its the way it envisages society, the world, the country, without changing its core values or its core belief system. And this is very evident in the manner in which the current RSS chief tries to reach out to various sections of society.
Okay.
But let me add that I don't think there was ever any attempt to shut the doors on the Dalits or the tribals or the marginalized. And if you have a retired police officer, a very senior police officer in Kerala, a Christian, who has, after retirement, approached the RSS and said that he would like to dedicate the rest of his life to the work of the Sangh, and he may be please allowed to do so. So this is something which has happened over time.
Okay.
Now, we haven't heard of these people. We haven't heard of their names. And lastly, I mean, people talk about the RSS reaching out to people during natural disasters, etc. One example, people should be aware of. There was an accident, a mid-air collision of two planes just off Delhi in Haryana, in the airspace of Haryana, when a Saudi Airlines plane filled with workers traveling from here to Saudi Arabia, that crashed. The other plane was empty. It was returning to Delhi to take off for another flight. And every single passenger was killed. And it so happened that every single passenger on that flight was a Muslim. And it was the RSS which went out and collected the body parts. They put together the dead. And even the Muslim organizations didn't step forward to do so.
Okay.
They thought it was shirk because the bodies were burned.
So
you
that
have to
brings
see
me
RSS in a much bigger
Okay.
canvas, a much bigger
Fair enough.
bag.
So that brings me to Sachin Nanda, and I want you, you've got about 2 minutes on the show, Sachin, and why don't you try and sum this up for us? There is this perception amongst Muslims that the RSS is militantly opposed to their interests. It espouses or champions the UCC, which many Muslims think is a threat to the way the Muslims practice their religion in this country. You can call it progressive. The Constitution denotes it as a progressive, aspirational goal. But fundamentally, there's this disconnect. It translates into a breakdown of confidence. How does the RSS now reach out to the Muslim community and win them over, so to speak, if nothing else?
Yeah, I mean, what a pertinent question, Rahul, because I think this, of all the challenges that modern India faces, this societal cohesion is probably in its top 3 challenges that it's going to have to face up to over the next 50 to 100 years. Now, the RSS, I suspect, will be a key ingredient in that solution, right, of how Indian society builds a stronger social cohesion. First and foremost, going back to the roots, from the Hedgewarian perspective, he was always encouraging and upfront about people of all creeds, including Muslims, Christians, to join the RSS. The red line for Hedgewar and what I would call progressive conservatism that he practiced was not religion. And that would just be that's a falsehood. That's ignorance at best and maliciousness at worst. His red line was on something called Deshbhakti. And Deshbhakti is not patriotism, not in the European sense, patriotism. Deshbhakti is literally the love of the soil, love of the thing that from which all these things that come from the soil that are mine, that I belong to, right? And there are many, many examples of that. But the red line is Deshbhakti. So for Hedgewar and the RSS, it's not who you pray to, how you pray, what you call your name, your language. None, that's all secondary. First and foremost is, where is your sacredness? Does your sacredness begin in the soil upon which you live, the soil which nourishes your life and your society? If that's a yes, you're a Deshbhakt, welcome to the RSS, right? But if India is to be a place to be subjugated, if Indian culture is something that abhors you, if your holy of holies are outside of India, and therefore India is just another place on the planet that I happen to live, if that's the if that's the bhav, that's the spirit with which one approaches India, then you're not a Deshbhakt, and then there's a red line. Now the RSS cannot, but now you're going to challenge. The RSS will collide with you. Now, therefore, the RSS is a friend of all Deshbhakts, regardless of religion. And RSS is a foe of all people who are non-Deshbhakts, right? And I think one has to be absolutely clear about that. That red line existed in 1925, and that red line exists today. Let me just sum up by saying one thing, Rahul. I think for India, and I would say this encouragingly, that I think it's good signs that the RSS and in particular Mohan Bhagwat is reaching out to the Muslim community. Okay. And I think the more Muslims that join the RSS, and I suspect that would happen if societal cohesion happens in India in a real sense, then I think what you will discover is that India's pluralism, the cultural pluralism of India, will retain while the individual cultivating this sense of Deshbhakti in them.
Right. So the onus, in some senses, lies on those who view their existence in pan-national terms. And they'll have to restrict their broad vision of their citizenship. And only then, of course, can they reconcile themselves with an RSS in India. So that's fundamentally the issues, viewers. We've covered a lot of ground. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for sharing your point of view and your perspective. It's been an informed debate. I leave it at that. Please feel free to comment on the comment section as you see these videos being uploaded on X.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
संघ के कार्य के 100 वर्ष पूरे करने वाले और इस निमित्त वर्षभर संघ ने जो कार्यक्रम आयोजित किए हैं उनका सूत्रपात करने वाले इस विजयादशमी उत्सव के निमित्त हम सब एकत्रित लोगों के बीच में आज के हमारे प्रमुख अतिथि महोदय भूतपूर्व राष्ट्रपति जी।
Hello and welcome to Vant.